Another Preds loss and another game defined by missed opportunities. We'll talk about how the Predators lost to the Kraken and whether a rough no call played any role in this loss. We'll talk about it today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start out with a special hello to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys. We appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime who, like me, is probably leading the charge to just ban West Coast road trips at this point.
I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at the Hockey News, and y'all, I'm tired.
Yeah, we were just talking about this, where it's like, oh boy, like
there's plenty more of these too.
Yeah, I can't wait for Calgary next week. At least that's mountain time. That's
true.
An hour better, right?
That's true. And Saturday's game against Edmonton's at 2 p.m., which we'll see what that does to the Nashville Predators. But in theory, it's better for us when it comes to sleep. So There's that.
I will take an afternoon hockey showdown anytime.
Yeah.
So Nashville Predators, Seattle Kraken, the rematch. Predators, of course, beat the Kraken, shut out the Kraken in their first home game at Bridgestone Arena this year. This time, a little bit of a different story. Seattle wins 4-2, went back and forth early. Tommy Novak scored first. Seattle scored twice to end the period. Roman Josi tied it up on a power play goal in the second period. Right after that, though, not even 25 seconds later, the Kraken went ahead, and that would be it for the rest of the game. Vince Dunn added one more to start the third period, and Seattle hang on to win 4-2. Ann, what's your one word to describe this game?
You know that I love the show The West Wing. It is my all-time favorite TV show. And I'm sure that I've used this one word before, but sometimes it's just where I'm at. And my one word is a quote from President Josiah Bartlett when he says, "What's next?" And it comes from my two favorite episodes in The Shadow of Two Gunmen, part 1, part 2. But you learn that President Bartlett says, "What's next?" And he says that when he is done with one thing and ready to move on to the next thing. And we're not going to do that. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Seattle Kraken game. But in some ways, that's a little bit where I'm at with a couple of these recent games with the Nashville Predators, because there are so many things to like. There are some things that the Nashville Predators did very, very well, but they don't get the win. And so it's like you can pull apart and you can wrestle with it and you can analyze the statistics and you can watch the recap and you can look back and rewatch this play and that play. But it all comes down to there were so many good things, but they don't get the win. And you can stay in a cycle of frustration with that. And I've gotten to the point where at 1 a.m. this morning, I was like, okay, I'm at what's next. Like, I have to let this game go and move on to the next game, because I think you can almost make yourself a little bit crazy with what's happening with the Nashville Predators right now. And I'm trying really hard not to do that, because, it's exhausting.
Well, I wish some people online would take your advice on that one.
Yeah, we got I was surprised by the one words that we got. We put out. Now, I know, y'all, it was a late game, so God bless anybody who stayed up to contribute one.
Everyone was cranky.
Everyone was tired and everyone was cranky. But we got some one words. Jesse Kelolampi. Jesse, I hope I said that one right. I might not have. Your one word was bad. Interesting.
No, the physical word that you used was the word bad. It's not
Was
like you
bad.
gave us a one word that we're like, wow, that's trash.
No, there's no
The
judgment.
word he
I'm just
used was
reading.
bad.
Yeah. I'm just reading. Rockets 160 said garbage. Holden at HBread42 said why. So this is interesting to me. Sydney Doutzenberg said frustrating. I'm that one I don't disagree with because I do feel like there is a frustration with this, but I think there's more to why we feel frustrated than just the 4-2 loss to the Kraken. But I'm kind of surprised by bad and garbage.
Yeah,
Because do
I
you
don't
really feel like this was a bad game or a garbage game?
I don't think they played bad at all. I
Okay.
think again there were some missed opportunities, and I'm
Good.
going to channel in to my Detroit Lions watching experience, and my one
Excellent.
word is Detroit Lions. There was a span of last year from like end of 2021 to like the middle of 2022. Everybody talks about like this big run the Lions have won where they've won like something like 14 out of their last 17 games dating back to last year. Probably should have started much earlier than that.
Mhm.
The Lions started playing really, really good. And then there was a game in which Justin Tucker scored a NFL record 66, 67-yard field goal that just
Dang.
booped off the bottom of the post and just like went right in. There was another Minnesota game in which the Lions basically had the game won with 20 seconds left. And then Kirk Cousins threw just like two really long passes and set up a game-winning field goal. The same thing like happened in Buffalo a few weeks later. The Lions basically got the win, and then a Hail Mary put the Bills in field goal range. And it was just like these little things where it's like, yay, we're doing good. Like we're beating up on all these tough teams. And then it comes time to like close it, and we drop the sale. Like
Yeah.
we just can't close the deal. Like one crazy thing happens. And that just kind of feels like what the Nashville Predators have
Yeah.
been doing in these past few games. It hasn't been like a dramatic last second, oh my God, they like had this one and then they did something stupid and screwed up in the last like 20 seconds. But it's like little opportunities where it's like they have a good run of play. They're just like absolutely on it. And then here comes like a 5-on-3. Here comes like a late power play at the end of the second. Like this is the chance to really kind of close the deal and cap off this hot play with some like positive goals and stuff like that. And they just can never do that. And they haven't been able to do that the past couple of games. And that's, kind of goes back to the finishing that
Yes.
we're talking about. We talk about it as they need to finish their chances and score goals, but they also need to finish their hot run of play with something positive.
Yeah.
And that to me has been the biggest problem with the Preds this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Nashville Predators have done so many things well. I think in the Seattle Kraken game last night, they did so many things well. If you look at things like high danger chances, if you look at momentum shifts, if you look at puck possession, if you look at shots on goal, if you look at what they created on their power play opportunities, they got 2 for 5 on the power play. That's not nothing. But even on the 3 they didn't score, they were creating opportunities. It's that finishing. It's like the guy who runs the marathon and he comes into the stadium and he collapses and he just watches somebody go past him, and it's so frustrating. And I think it's frustrating because it feels like what we saw from the Nashville Predators last season and a
Yeah.
little bit the season before. It feels the same way, like we should have won this, but we didn't. But it's not the same scenario, and the Predators aren't in the same place. So I think it's our feelings are tricking us into thinking things are worse than they are.
I use the word Peter Laviolette when we were talking about this before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But doesn't it seem like exactly like it, where they're like out shooting teams like 40-20, but it's like they're like dominating games, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, they accidentally gave up a 2-on-0 breakaway and they
Yes.
scored, and now we're losing. Like, doesn't
Yes.
it feel like that, where it's just could never quite get the handle on it?
Yeah, it does. It feels like that. I don't know that it is 100% that, in the sense that I think you still have a team that is getting comfortable with each other and that is unlearning and trying to get what Andrew Brunette wants to do into their DNA. So I
Yeah.
think they're still I mean, we're 10 games in with a new head coach and a new roster and a new system, y'all. We're
Yeah.
10 games in, but it feels the same way. And that feling is unpleasant. It is
Yeah, I want
unpleasant.
to I want to talk more about this in a minute because I think you hit on something where it's just we're kind of a month into this NHL season now. How do we think the Preds are
Mhm.
moving forward? Because, like you said, there's a lot of positives we've seen. It's just it feels like there's something that they need to do, like one more piece to really get them to where they want to be. So we'll talk about what that one more piece is. Plus, a no call in this game last night. The Preds didn't like it. Do you and I like it? That's coming up in one moment. Want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Parkview Advance. As a business owner, you realize there are times when receivables might fall behind, but that doesn't mean you need to fall behind on vendor payments, payroll, or rent. For more than 25 years, Parkview Advance has helped businesses secure working capital from $5,000 to $1.5 million. Parkview Advance can approve your working capital in as little as 24 hours. And it's a much easier process than you might imagine. We invite the many entrepreneurs that are locked on NHL fans to call Parkview Advance at 203-675-0071 or go to parkviewadvance.com. If your business needs working capital, call Parkview Advance today. Parkview Advance, helping businesses with their working capital. Go to parkviewadvance.com to learn more.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends at Indeed. When you are drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessment, and virtual interviews. If you hate waiting, Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed's employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job descriptions the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed does all the hard work for you. Sponsor a job and boom, Instant Match shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description immediately after you post. With Instant Match, you can start hiring fast. And according to Indeed's US data, candidates you invite to apply are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search. So join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. Visit Indeed.com/locked on to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on. Again, Indeed.com/locked on. If you need to hire, you need Indeed.
All right, and you hit on something before the break that I want to talk about, and that is just kind of where the Nashville Predators are right now, because you see a lot of things really going in their favor right now. According to naturalstattrick.com, 7th in the NHL in expected goals per game.
Yeah.
They are 10th in terms of Corsi for percentage per game, which is measures like puck possession. So they're getting a lot of these little stats and metrics that people use to kind of say, okay, who's really like a good team and who's really a bad team. The Predators are excelling in a lot of those areas. But it's just like what needs to happen? Like how do the Predators translate that to tangible goals,
Yeah.
tangible wins? Because it feels like that's been the problem for a
Mhm.
little bit. Like, look last night, the Predators outshot the Kraken 34-31. I mean, how many times have we talked about last year the Predators
Oh,
out
God.
shooting anybody?
Yep.
How many times have we talked about the Predators getting more than 30 shots on goal in a lot of games?
Yeah.
And they've done that consistently. They've outshot a lot of teams they've played consistently. It's just what's in your mind, like what's kind of that missing piece? Like what do the
Mhm.
Predators need to do to translate all these good things they're doing into actual tangible results in the standings page?
Two words. Two words for me sum up the difference between the Nashville Predators performance and the Nashville Predators record. And those words are Filip Forsberg. And I don't want to put it all on him as any sort of criticism, because here's what's real about Filip Forsberg's season so far. He is killing it in so many areas. He has 41 shots on goal, the most of any Nashville Predator. His expected goals for 4.27. He leads the team when it comes to high danger chances. He is doing everything right except scoring. His shooting percentage, 2.44. So when you when you look at what the Nashville Predators are doing, and I'm not just talking statistically, I'm talking, let's just take eye test. I test the game against Seattle, and it was a very competitive game. Seattle is a very good team. They're a very fast team, but you can eye test that game and say, you know what? The Nashville Predators are in that game. They are in that game. What is the difference? The difference is Filip Forsberg finishes.
Yeah.
And the thing that it's hard to, I don't even want to say it as a criticism. And I think this is true, not just of Forsberg, but of the Predators as a whole. It's hard to be come off as critical of them because they're doing things right. Filip Forsberg is doing things right. He's just not finishing. Points leader, incredible. He is contributing, but the Predators need him to score on some of these high danger chances. And I think if you get Filip Forsberg going, when you have people like Colton Sissons going and Tommy Novak going and Cole Smith going, you've got some other pieces offensively. Roman Josi is starting to warm up. Then I think some of these games turn into wins. And that's what the Predators need. That's the gap, not performance. It's wins. That's
Yeah.
the gap. And I think Forsberg fills that gap.
Yeah, Filip Forsberg, 9 points in 10 games this season. And you're like, all right, heck yeah. 1 goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a guy who you kind of signed a few years ago to be like the sniper of the team. 42 goals
Right.
2 years ago. And especially you don't have Matt Duchene anymore. You don't
Right.
have Ryan Johansson. Those were like your 2 other big goal scorers.
Yeah.
The 2 guys that would step in and finish plays. And the Predators don't have that. Ryan O'Reilly, we talked about that. Like, he's a good player, but we mentioned like scoring goals has never been his thing. I think he's got like a high of 29
Mhm.
or something like that, or a career high. You have younger players like Tommy Novak, who scored again, that are
Yep.
doing it. But yeah, like again, like when we made all those off-season moves this past summer, we said this was only going to work if the players the Predators had now could
Yes.
step up and fill that scoring gap.
Right.
And Filip Forsberg has gotten a lot of assists. He's contributed on a lot of the goals, but we need him to be that scorer he was a couple of years ago. We need him to be that finisher he was a couple of years ago. Otherwise, the Predators are just kind of going to be spinning their wheels for the next little bit. They need
Right.
somebody to step up and finish. And I agree with you. I think Forsberg's that guy.
And he's so close to doing that. That is what I think is a little bit frustrating, is he is so close to doing that. He is doing everything right. And I hate the term snake bit. I hate that. But there is an element of, is he feeling pressure for like, gosh, I am doing everything right, and yet I'm not finding the back of the net, and you have to hope that he's not gripping the stick a little bit too tight, because once Forsberg gets going, these close games, these frustrating games are going to turn into 2 points for the Nashville Predators. I really believe that. And I agree with you. Barry Trotz banked almost everything offensively on Filip Forsberg. I mean, he got rid of Matt Duchene. He bought him out. He traded Johansson because he said, I know what we have in Filip Forsberg. I still believe Barry Trotz is right. We just got to get him to finish. And I'm not sure how much. You can't even say it's like he needs to execute better. He's executing almost flawlessly except for finishing. Like, he's doing all the things right. And I think that is a little bit frustrating, and probably as much or more so for him than anyone else. So, but I think Forsberg, he is the difference between this team losing a game like last night's game against Seattle and winning a game like last night's game against Seattle.
Yeah. There was another thing that happened in the game last night.
Come on
I'm
now.
not sure if it really played a role in the loss or not, but it was enough to get Andrew Brunette fired up and a lot of the Preds fired up. We're talking, of course, about the no call on Stickgate. I guess what you can
That's
call
right.
it. Big deal or not? We'll talk about that in just 1 second.
First, want to let you know this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? Like, you know what you should do, you know what's good for you, but you just can't quite get there. Therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself and not against yourself. Look, there is still this lingering belief among some people that therapy is only for people who have experienced major trauma, but that is just not true. Therapy can be so beneficial for everyone when it comes to things like learning positive coping skills, setting healthy boundaries, and empowering you to be the best version of yourself. Look, we all have areas of our lives we know could be better if we learn how to navigate perhaps a relationship or a circumstance in a new way. If you are thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online and it is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you find that you are looking for a different fit, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnhl today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnhl for 10% off your first month.
All right, Ann, there's a moment in last night's game
Mhm.
we need to talk about. Boy, okay, so here's what happened. So this was third period,
Third
I
period.
believe. Philip Grubauer made a wild save, lost his stick in the process.
Sure did.
A fellow Kraken teammate
Mm-hmm.
brought the stick back to him. And I phrase it like that
Yeah.
because, boy, it sure looked like he was sort of dragging his skate on the ice and just kind of skating it with his little
Yeah.
feet back to Grubauer. The reason that is causing some drama for Preds fans is because, according to the NHL rulebook, you're not allowed to kick a stick.
Come on now.
You're not allowed to kick it out of the way. You're not allowed to just kick it back to the goalie if the goalie loses a stick. And yeah, so you're not allowed to do that technically.
Technically.
I guess you can knock a stick back. You just can't kick it. It sure looked like it was kicked. Andrew Brunette, red face and all, certainly agreed with us because he let the refs have it after that. A lot of the Preds bench certainly let it have it. For a lengthy discussion with the officials, for some reason, they didn't see what we saw, or we never, it didn't seem like we got a clear explanation of why there was no call on that. But that it would have been a power play opportunity for the Preds in the third period. And as you mentioned, Ann, 2 for 5 on the power play last night.
Yeah.
I think at that point that would have tied the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, like what's your thoughts on this?
On Stickgate. Okay. So spend some time again going back through the rule book. Like, okay, come on, y'all. How did you miss it? Because it was like it traveled, like there was a long distance. Now, the rule book says you can't kick a stick. The only thing I can think is that the officials were like, well, he skated it back with his foot. Now, look, a kick, I get like one motion kicking it from the boards back to the goaltender. I get that that's a kick, but it is also a kick, my friends. If you use your skate and you move it several inches with each movement back to Grubauer. And I will say the Nashville Predators lost their Jesus on the bench.
Yeah.
I mean, you could hear them losing their ever-loving minds over this. And it is baffling to me because it's an unsportsmanlike, I think, is what it's technically called, to return the stick. And yet we stood there and we watched the stick just get kicked and skated back to Grubauer. And I'm like, and again, you go like, you've got to win games when calls go for you or against you. But that one was very, very frustrating, my friends. That one was very frustrating because I thought, I'm not sure how thin the hair is that you're going to try to split to tell me why you didn't call this. Because like when you move something with your foot, it's a kick, right? I'm just saying.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the argument were, for at least from the Preds perspective or the Kraken perspective was, it got like stuck in his skate and he was skating back to the crease and it just so happened to bounce back exactly where it needed to bounce, and yay, everything worked out and it was a total coincidence. Yeah, I mean, it looked like that to us. Like that's not the case. Like it certainly looked intentional. But hey, like just ask Michigan football. Take any advantage you can get, right?
I do want to bring up one other thing that happened, and this happened early in the game, and it's going to be hard for me to talk about without doing the because I have a thing about teeth.
Oh boy.
I have a thing about teeth. Gus Nyquist took a stick to the mouth. It looked like he was picking his teeth up off the ice. The Predators got a 4-minute penalty. A lot happened in that 4 minutes that changed the scenario. But I want to revisit Luke Evangelista's comments in the first intermission when asked how Gus Nyquist was. This is what Luke Evangelista had to say. This is how he summarized the situation. Just 10 zips and all good in the jib department. That is what Luke Evangelista had to say. Now, friends, I read that and I thought, I don't know if I'm at a hockey game or a regatta. What in the world does any of that mean?
You were fascinated by this last night.
I was like, I don't know what a jib is. Yeah. I don't know what a zip is in this context. And I know nothing more about the state of Gus Nyquist's dental situation than I did before Luke Evangelista tried to clear it up for me. What is going on with this young generation?
Yeah. So I've heard like cut of the jib, but I thought that was like a sailing reference, right?
Right.
Like,
right.
Yeah, like isn't like, so is jib like a mouth?
So somebody jumped in on Twitter, and I wish I could remember who, because kudos for helping a middle-aged woman sort through my absolute confusion, but said,
jib expert, yes,
jib means teeth. And I'm like, in what language?
Yes.
In what language is jib teeth? I don't know. I was so confused by that. Now, here's what I will say. You know that I love some of the Vangisms that have come out since Luke came up. I'm a huge fan of calling the power play the peeper. He did it one time in a post game, and I thought this has to stick. It's not stuck yet, but friends, I will not let it die. I do call the power play the peeper, but I don't know what to do with the jib and the zips. I don't know what any of that means, friends. I don't know how Gus Nyquist is this morning. I don't know.
We'll follow up on his jib here in just a little bit.
Yes, for sure.
So the Predators this weekend have a game against the Edmonton Oilers, a Saturday afternoon game, and then they continue with their road trip next week. Next Monday, we'll break down how the Predators are doing with a friendly round of plus minus, plus more headlines from this weekend. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter X at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at penaltyboxradio.com. Follow me on X at _NSMorgan. Also, be sure to follow our podcast pretty much anywhere on social media. Stay up to date and get a bunch of new content in the process. Yeah, that's going to do it for us this weekend. This is the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day, and we will be back Monday with a new episode. We'll see you then.